Let's move to Zimbabwe now. Anti-government protests have resulted in activists and civilians being arrested. President Emmerson Mnangagwa says the protest is a revolt by the opposition party, the Movement for Democratic Change. Demonstrations are against corruption and economic hardships, including soaring inflation that eroded salaries and pensions. Joining us now from Bulawayo in Zimbabwe is the acting leader of the MDC Alliance, Professor Welshman Ncube. Professor Ncube, thank you for joining us. First of all, can you confirm if any of MDC Alliance leaders have been arrested by soldiers in Zimbabwe?
Yes, our people across the country have been arrested over and over again. Even the party spokesperson, Fazai, who was arrested and granted bail yesterday. One of our members of parliament in Masvingo is still in custody, bail hearing on Monday. There are some people who are unaccounted for. Hundreds and hundreds of our young people are also in hiding at the moment. So the levels of repression are extremely worrying, and they are widespread across the country.
Now, Professor, it's clear that the people of Zimbabwe are defenseless against their government. I mean, these protests, they were reportedly supposed to start off peacefully, but of course, you know, people started to get agitated when the soldiers attacked, it seems. Professor Ncube?
Yes. In fact, the net result is that really there were no protests. As far as we know, there was no violence, except the violence committed by the security forces against those who attempted, the few people who attempted to demonstrate in their localities, because the urban centers, the city centers across the country were sealed off from the public a day before the scheduled demonstration. So I will say that the ordinary people who attempted to demonstrate in the local areas that they were in were by and large peaceful. The only form of violence that we witness in this country is state violence against innocent, peace-loving Zimbabweans who are simply trying to express themselves. Let us remember that those who organized or attempted to organize the march were doing so to protest against corruption, against economic hardships, against the collapse of the health system, generally against the suffering of the people, which is due to the failure of the government to do anything. It's plain that the government is unable to address the economic situation, is unable to do anything. And of course, the people have a right to protest rather than watch their livelihoods being eroded day in, day out. But the people are peaceful. Unfortunately, we have a government which is not peaceful, a government which believes in rule by coercion rather than rule by consent.
Now, you know, that's very interesting because it leads to my next question. If somebody in the world had to perhaps not know that the president of Zimbabwe is no longer former President Robert Mugabe, is there any difference between that presidency and that of President Emmerson Mnangagwa? Because the scenes that you describe mirror the previous presidency of Zimbabwe.
Let me say that for most of us, we could never have imagined that it was possible to, in fact, have a regime, a government worse than that of Robert Mugabe. But there's no doubt now, there's absolutely no doubt that this government is far, infinitely more worse. It is incompetent, it is unable to manage the economy of the country, it is unable to define any policy options, it is unable to lead. The only thing that they understand and that they seem to be excellent at is repression, coercion, and more coercion. Everything, they respond to just about everything through coercion. So there's no doubt that we are far, far worse than we were under the leadership of Robert Mugabe. But it's not surprising, because most of the people who are now in power were in fact those who were, if you like, the stormtroopers under President Mugabe's government.
Now, of course, something like this, you would need assistance from countries in the SADC region, but more particularly the African Union. Have you received any call or any communication from the AU chair, President Cyril Ramaphosa, regarding what's happening in Zimbabwe, probably just to get your side of the story?
Not yet. The leadership of SADC has not sought to engage us. The leadership of the AU has not sought to engage us. We have sought to call upon them to put Zimbabwe on the AU agenda, to put Zimbabwe on the SADC agenda. What is necessary in Zimbabwe is for the parties, for the political parties, for civil society to have dialogue, to address the issues which are at the core of the problem that we face. If you do not engage in dialogue, if you do not promote peaceful dialogue, you end up, in fact, ultimately encouraging violence. And as the MDC leadership, we have repeatedly said we would rather have the problems of the country resolved peacefully and amicably, if possible. But no one is listening at this particular moment.
Well, thank you very much. That is Welshman Ncube, the acting president of the MDC in Zimbabwe. Now, still to